There is something incredibly powerful and empowering, but at the same time, in many ways, really quite scary when we take responsibility for our inner world, for our inner reality, for our inner feelings and beliefs. And in many ways, the simple action of realizing that, of saying, hold on, even though I feel like a victim, maybe, or at the behest of all that has happened to me and all that I've become, I have the capacity to take responsibility for how I feel. And that throws something into the fire. Something begins to change in that recognition. The shift away, obviously, from victim. The shift away from saying, oh, I don't know what to do. And notice, I'm not talking about the outer world. I'm not talking about, what you do for a living. I'm not talking about the darkness of the world. Although the outer and the inner are obviously inextricably linked, because on a certain level of consciousness, the outer and the inner are seen and known to be one. And so changes on the inner world affect changes on the outer world. For indeed there is no inner world or outer world. But on this certain level of reality, there is an inner world and an outer world. And I'm very much only talking about the inner world, about how we feel, about some of the core beliefs that we carry around. It's always a worthy investigation to root out, to find out through inquiry, what are my core beliefs about myself and or the world? Because they tend to drive a lot of our behavior and our emotions and our beliefs, our subsequent beliefs, that is. And that is, in effect, taking responsibility for it. The responsibility is the saying of, this is my world. This is my inner world. Who else lives here? Because as far as I can see, and the work that I've done on myself and the work that I've done with other people, there are a lot of people who live in one's consciousness, who live in one's mind, who live in one's emotional body, I realised that, and it was profound. I realised, for instance, with my parents passed away many years ago, and then I realised after 10 years, well, they might have died on the external plane, but they were still living in me as my beliefs, as my emotions, as my beliefs, actually as my grievances, some of my hostilities, some of my anger. And that became my responsibility to deal with. That's pretty scary, because it means we have to face up to ourselves. But it's either that or never facing up to ourselves. And that's a sad loss. That's something that we miss. Yeah, if we don't ever do that, then we miss a great opportunity. We miss a great moment in life. Taking responsibility kind of pulls you, forces you to step out of the uncomfortable comfort zone that you live in. Says, okay, I'm gonna really deal with this. Really deal with it somehow. That does mean facing ourselves, facing yourself. And that hurts, of course. But you know, the truth is, it doesn't hurt as much as avoiding yourself. Pain of avoidance creates such a fracturing, such a sense of separation, such a alienation, that you sort of easily kind of live a half-life, a shadow life. And for some people that's really terrible, you know, and they end up expressing it in all sorts, projecting it in all sorts of really very difficult ways, you know, projecting it onto others, or, you know, taking it out on oneself, and, you know, self-harming or harming others, or, you know, venting anger against the world when it's not actually the world's fault. You know, a million different variations on what happens when we push it away and keep pushing ourselves away because we can't face ourselves. Taking responsibility is facing yourself. And my mind, it might hurt, but like I say, better the pain of facing yourself than the suffering of continually avoiding yourself. Now I know that may sound hard almost. But it's not meant with a hardness. It's meant with a great love, because the movement towards wholeness, the wholeness of taking responsibility and meeting yourself completely, you know, over time, it takes time. It's so beautiful because an intimacy happens. That's love. That becomes self-love. That becomes love as the fragrance of who we are. And there's nothing more exquisite than that fragrance. So, take responsibility.